A day after Saturday's SEC championship game between Alabama and Florida, what do we know? We know that the Alabama Crimson Tide absolutely rolled. In an SEC championship game that featured for the very first time the #1 and the #2 team in the country, a matchup that many people had expected and anticipated for the entire season, a matchup that pitted two 12-0 teams, the #1 and the #2 ranked teams in the country, in addition to the #1 and the #2 ranked defenses in the country, was actually a blowout. The Florida Gators could do nothing on offense. The Florida Gators could do nothing to stop the Crimson Tide on defense, and they looked thoroughly overmatched the entire game. Granted, Alabama had circled this game since their loss in last year's SEC championship game, but you had to believe that Florida was going to come out and put on a better show than they did. Certainly, they admitted that they could have prepared a little bit better, but didn't they have enough motivation going into this game to make it a little more competitive than the final score, 32-13? Florida fans will look to a number of key moments and say that they could have been turning points in the game. I say certainly. If a couple of things had fallen their way, if they had made a couple of plays, maybe this is a competitive game. But the Alabama Crimson Tide can look back on this and really relish the fact that it was a dominating performance. If you're a Florida Gator fan, you're going to remember that in the first quarter, on the Gators' first drive, on the second play of the game, Jeff Demps drops a pass where there's really nothing between him and the end zone and his 10.01 100-meter speed, but open field. If the Gators are able to, instead of a 3 and out, score 7 points, that absolutely changes the face of the game. If Aaron Hernandez doesn't drop a touchdown, forcing the Gators to kick a field goal instead of a 4-point swing there. If Tim Tebow lofts that ball at the beginning of the fourth quarter to Hernandez in the corner of the end zone instead of having it intercepted, they're able to cut the lead to 32-20. However, Alabama can counter that they made mistakes of their own, and at the end of the day, they were the better team. If you're a Tim Tebow fan, and even if you're not, you've got a feel for a guy who seems to have played the right way for a 4-year career and end it like that. But also, on the other side of the ball, you know that Nick Saban prepared his guys. You know that they came hungry, and they really laid it all on the line. McElroy was the better quarterback. McElroy was flawless in his performance. He made big plays both with his arms and with his feet. And surprisingly, he was the one that in third down situations and goal line situations was making the big plays. You've got to hand it to Alabama. I think that if you don't give the Heisman to that running back from Alabama, then, man, I don't know who it's going to go to. Great performance by Mark Ingram. He showed the speed, the power of, as many people were saying during the game, reminiscent of Emmitt Smith, same number, same conference, and not only did he have that long screen play that he took down the sideline for 69 yards, but he also had 3 touchdowns and 120, 130 really tough yards. The Florida defense hasn't been exposed like that all year. And on the other side of the ball, the Florida offense was able to do absolutely nothing. I think we saw this game, something that people that had watched Florida games all year already knew, that Percy Harvin was a dynamic part of that offense. Defenses needed to scheme for Percy Harvin. Many defensive coordinators made the comment last year that at all points you needed to know where Percy Harvin was on the field. He scored a touchdown in 10, 12, 14, something like that of the last games that he played as a college wide receiver / running back for the Florida Gators, and his ability, his big play ability, and his explosiveness was what really softened up the rest of the defense and really gave the other players on offense the ability to break big plays. We saw Jeff Demps and Chris Rainey last year consistently ripping off big runs time and time again, and the reason was the defenses were so focused on Percy Harvin. Absolutely, Tim Tebow was a great player, had a phenomenal college career, and was able to will his team to victory more often than not. A 12-0 regular season in the SEC is something that is incredibly impressive. However, Alabama looks like the team to beat in the national championship game that's going to pit them against a Texas team that had more than they could handle from a Nebraska Cornhuskers defense that basically shut them down. Alabama, we have to tip our hats. You played a great game. Florida, great year. Consolation prize, Cincinnati in the Sugar Bowl.